I'm feeling really passionate about this. This is where I want to go. There was also, now that I'm talking, there was also a lecturer, and I found him so interesting. I can't even think exactly what he was saying, but it was just his presence was really motivating to me. So he'd say something, I'd be like, oh my God, wow, that's so interesting. So he gave me a new lens to view life through. And I think with the social...
Interesting.
So I think I probably would have been more, if I didn't have that foundation, I probably would have been more here and now, solution focused, and was a here now and then working towards future goals. But I think the social care really brought out that part in me, to go back and to, do that inner child work, more person-centered approach, definitely from that. We do this and it went well. And if it didn't go well, then we can learn from that and we can apply it in a different way, do things different maybe in the future. And I think that's what counselling psychotherapy is all about, is, learning from mistakes. You're never done learning.
Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Expedition, and today I'm speaking to Melissa Daly. Melissa, hello.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good.
And I wanted to say welcome back, and I forgot to say it, but I'm saying it now. Yeah, because we are having our second take.
Yeah.
Because we had a power outage.
Yeah.
Just starting the recording and just like everything went black, no lights, no cameras, and we are back after almost 2 hours walking around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Trying to find an open coffee shop,
which
we didn't find.
That's it. Yeah. But look, everything happens for a reason, isn't that it?
Yeah. So how are you? How are you being here? Speaking about your journey, becoming a psychotherapist.
So I think the power outage kind of helped us in a way, didn't it?
So.
To kind of, I suppose, realign, and the nerves are kind of gone a little bit now. And getting that walk, so it just shows the power of getting out, getting fresh air, a walk to kind of break that space. Driving down, I suppose I woke up quite anxious. I think I was quite anxious, even as I was saying to you before, when you sent me the email to even come on the podcast. The initial thoughts are, oh, me? Like, you want me on the podcast? Wow. And I kind of sat with it for a while, a couple of days before I emailed you back, and chatted to a couple of people about it, and I was like, should I do it, shouldn't I do it, and I suppose the conclusion that I came to was, if I said no to doing it, it was fear that was holding me back. So it would have been a fear-based decision. So I kind of looked at it through kind of a more rational lens of, that I do want to do this, but what are those fears that are holding me back? So I thought about that for a couple of days. Then I actually said to myself, I was like, look, I'll email back. We'll have a chat.
Yes.
And I'll see. So I think, that perspective can really help to break things down.
For sure.
So it's not that I'm thinking, oh, I'm going on a podcast. It's no, I'm meeting someone for an hour to have a chat about going on a podcast. So I suppose to answer your question, there's been a mix of emotions that are coming on. Excitement as well, like massive excitement when I woke up this morning. Felt anxious, had my supervision with my supervisor, and felt really calm after that, because I was talking to her, telling her about that I was going on the podcast. And, hearing her perspective on it as well really motivated me and made me really excited to come on and do something different. And I also set myself a little bit of a challenge as well. With my Instagram, talking on my stories for the first time, which I haven't done. I usually just kind of record reels. And this was my first time just doing a raw video and putting it on my story. And just kind of sitting with the feeling that came up there as well, just kind of get me ready for this experience.
What was that feeling like? What did you feel?
Oh, I suppose that inner critic coming in straight away, of, oh, did I say something wrong? Or what are people
me every single time.
And that's it, it's such a universal experience, of oh, did I say something wrong? And that's kind of, I think, the impulse of, the thoughts that come into our mind. Then I sat back, and it was actually really interesting. I said to Steve, my boyfriend, I said to him, I'm going to record this once and I'm going to put this up, and I'm not even going to, think about it. So, because usually I might get him to proof watch my videos that I put up. And I said to him, that's what I'm going to do. So I recorded anyway, and I brought it into him, and I was like, will you just look at this for a second? And he said no. He was like, you said you're going to put it up. And I did. And I kind of sat
held you accountable to your own words.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's so important to have people in your life that do that for you. And so I put it up, and I'm delighted I put it up. And 5 minutes after I posted it up, that anxiety was gone and just turned into a sense of achievement and feeling proud of myself, that I am here, and I decided to come here today.
Yeah. And thank you for being here, and thank you for being here for the second time, because we had the power outage, and I didn't know, obviously, we didn't know how long it will take. Will it be resolved today? And I'm thinking, will she come back? It's not going to be resolved today, and you are.
That's it. Of course, I would have came back. And I think, that's another part of this podcast for me, is that kind of social element of things, that we are recording this podcast for that professional side of our lives, but also the kind of personal, getting to know you as well, as a massive thing for me, and making those connections with people. So of course I would come back.
A pleasure having you here. Really.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell me more how this whole thing of us sitting here, me meeting you, how did we even get there? How did you start with the whole psychotherapy journey?
I suppose we have to go back a little bit to when I first started. So I suppose my first experience of psychotherapy was a personal experience. So I went to counselling, specifically CBT counselling, when I was about 14 for the first time. So that was my experience. And when I first went into it, I loved it. I got a lot from my experience in counselling then. So it was, I suppose, when we're looking at the CBT, focus on my thoughts, and it gave me a new lens to view life through when I did it when I was really young. So that really benefited me.
And did you pick CBT therapist, or you ended up with a CBT therapist?
I just ended up with a CBT therapist at the time. I suppose it was, I was just kind of referred to go to this counsellor at the time.
Yes.
I didn't know what I was going in for. It was only actually when I kind of got older, I realised, that was CBT. I didn't know that there was different types of counselling.
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue. I was just sitting in front of someone talking, and that's all I knew. Yeah. And I was getting benefit from it. So I finished up with that, and I then, when I was 17, I went to college. So I did my social care degree. And the reason I chose social care was because I knew I wanted to go into kind of a profession of helping people. But I didn't really know what that was or what that looked like.
Also being 17, of course you didn't have a full idea what you wanted to do. Yeah,
that's it. I didn't have a clue. It was only kind of through talking to my mum and my sisters and family members, like, okay, I think social care might be good for you. I did look into psychology as well at the time, but the points were just too high. I knew I wouldn't get those points. So I said, okay, social care is nice. And I went down to Waterford, did my 4 years in social care. To be honest, in my social care degree, I found it difficult to kind of, I suppose emotionally, that kind of, going from living at home to living in college. And it was just a massive change, because I was 17. I think if I had pushed it maybe 2 years, I would have been in a better space mentally to go to college. And as I was saying to you before, I didn't do TY. A lot of my friends would have done TY, so I was a year ahead of them. So I felt like I was kind
TY?
of... TY is, in in school.
I should know, but
TY, it's like the
transition year.
Transition year. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
The famous Irish transition year.
Yeah, that's it. Transition year. Yeah. Yes. So I skipped TY. So all my friends were still in 6th year when I went off to college. Now I did go to college with one of my really good friends as well, but a lot of my core group were still in school. So I felt, I suppose, quite lonely heading off to college, and a lot of my friends kind of staying in secondary school. We're still in secondary school at that time. So I suppose I was going through that. I found it difficult to make friends. So it was, I suppose, a real balance of feelings, because I loved the social care degree. I really, really, really enjoyed every part of that. I loved my placements. But it was just, I felt quite like that I wasn't really ready to go to college at that point. But I got through it. There was never any question in my mind that I wouldn't finish the social care, because I really loved it. And then so while I was actually working in social care, I worked in fast food. I worked in KFC and I worked in Tesco, just to kind of get me through, at the weekends. And then I I did my master's in cognitive behavioural therapy after that down in Waterford. So both of them were in Waterford. And I loved the master's, the CBT. I was really drawn to CBT because actually at one of the modules in my final year social care was kind of counselling and counselling modalities, I think was called, something like that. Yeah. So then I started thinking, I really, really enjoy this. And it was really interesting because it was one of my last modules in fourth year. Mm-hmm. So then I started to kind of gravitate towards that. And I remember going up to the lecture at the end of that module and saying, can you give me any guidance on where I could go? And then obviously the CBT cognitive behavioural therapy masters was in Waterford, so she kind of recommended that. Then I went on to do my masters in CBT and motivational interviewing. So they were kind of, I suppose it was half CBT, half motivational interviewing. What's
motivational? I just wanted to ask you.
So how they described us now, to be honest, I don't really use motivational interviewing too much with clients at the moment, but how they described it was, I was more interested in the CBT part of things. How they described it was motivational interviewing is when, someone maybe isn't ready to change. So it's a way to, it's used mostly kind of in addiction work. When someone, isn't ready to change. So it's a way of kind of motivating them to change. And, just I suppose exploring, the behaviours that they have right now. As part of the masters, we had to do kind of, I suppose it was like a role play, okay? Doing CBT. So each person in the class would do like a part of a session. So one person might do the introduction part of a session, maybe an assessment, psychoeducation piece, reframing thoughts and all this sort of thing. But there was a twist that you were being broadcasted down to your classmates. So we'll say all my classmates were on one level, then there was like a setting kind of like this. You'd go upstairs and we'll say we would have a counselling session like this, but it would be filmed and being broadcasted down to the whole class.
Yeah.
And it was so tough. I was so nervous going into that. But I got through it all the same. And it's, as everything is, like, it's a learning curve, and even with this podcast, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone to do these things, and the anxiety that you feel, we don't want that to hold us back because it's a motivator, for us to do these things. Like if I didn't have the anxiety today about coming on this podcast, I wouldn't have prepared as well for the podcast. So going back to the question, it was kind of the CBT. So I did the masters there. And then, as I was saying to you before, that when I was doing my assignments, I would kind of be gravitated back to, the past, childhood, inner child work. And I'd always kind of be realigned because, of course, I'm in a master's in CBT of, we need to focus on this, in CBT that's a little bit more structured, than maybe a person-centered counselling. Mm-hmm. So then I kind of started to think, okay, I think my mind is dragging me somewhere else here. Mm-hmm. So then after I did the masters, I went off and I applied for the integrative counselling psychotherapy degree. So because I had my background in social care and I had the background in the masters, I entered into year 3 of the integrative counselling psychotherapy degree. And so it was kind of year 3, but then there were other modules that I had to do outside of kind of that core course, if that makes sense, just kind of bridge the gaps. Yeah. It was I think that was actually the name of the course. It was like bridging course. So I was in a bridging course and I was in year 3. So I didn't know where I was. And so got through that. But then in year 4, I was in just one class. So it felt like stable, that I could just kind of work within one year and have all the same people, same lecturers together. That's kind of my educational background anyway of what brought me to counselling. I know we had spoke about, was there a moment that I said, I really want to be a psychotherapist, And I think it's always been in me. Always been in me since I had my first experience in counselling, in CBT. Mm-hmm. But it was just kind of the process of the social care in figuring out what that was. And as I, doing that last module in social care, it was like, okay, I'm feeling really passionate about this. This is where I want to go. There was also, now that I'm talking, there was also a lecturer and I found him so interesting. I can't even think exactly what he was saying, but it was just his presence was really motivating to me. So he'd say something, I'd be like, oh my God, wow, that's so interesting. So he gave me a new lens to view life through. And I think with the social care degree, that degree gave me a whole new perspective on life. It really did. I remember going into first year and thinking, wow, I didn't know this was possible, and it's not something that I can properly nail down of like, this happened and this happened. It was more of a feeling, in it of like, oh, wow, there's life outside of Ireland, there's a life outside of my core friend group here, and that I can achieve things, there's a whole world of things that I can achieve that I feel like, and I suppose it comes back to what we'll get into maybe later on in the podcast, of that box that we put ourselves in, those shoulds that maybe I was putting on myself back then, that the social care degree really kind of opened up my perspective to what I was capable of in so many ways. So I don't think there was a specific moment where I was like, okay, that's what I want. But it was a process of personal development, I suppose, in a way. Yeah.
And what I'm hearing mainly is you didn't say no to any of those stepping stones on your journey. You went to social care and then, okay, I can do masters in CBT. Okay, I can do humanistic bachelor. I think it's very interesting. What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we were saying already today, of that these are all stepping stones. Sometimes we look at people and we're like, wow, how did they get there? Yeah. How did they do that? Were they born with all this confidence and all this, because, I sometimes look at people like that, and think, wow, on social media, I suppose in particular, but you don't see the behind the scenes of, the reflection, the anxieties that people go through, like the hard times. We just see kind of this polished end result, not the process of, going through social care, having those times where, I'm thinking, oh, should I do this? Money comes into it as well. Can I afford to do this course specifically in integrative counselling psychotherapy? Can I afford to do that? And just looking at all the different practical things, that there's a process. And I think it is a kind of like it's like the building blocks. Okay. I push myself outside the comfort zone. Even, if I bring it back to the podcast today, pushing myself outside my comfort zone to do this, or even for yourself to set it up, is just massive. To go outside that comfort zone. So maybe I could, do a talk in front of more people, and build that way, because sometimes, if we step outside and we see a mountain of things in front of us, we'll just go straight back into bed. And I'm like, I'm not tackling that. Too much, way too much. But if we break it down step by step, tiny steps, I always say small steps, big goals, tiny, tiny, tiny steps, but we still want to have, long-term goals for ourselves. But sometimes if they're too big, or we put too much pressure on ourselves to achieve them, they're unattainable. So going back to your third year, right? So you entered in third year of the humanistic bachelor psychotherapy course. What was it like for you?
I think it was really daunting. It was really daunting, especially because I mentioned that I was coming in not knowing anyone. I was coming in, in the middle of their year.
Were you the only one who was joining their course while they were already having their third year?
Yeah, together? As far as I know anyway, that I was the only one. And I never mentioned that it was online.
Yes.
As well. So
because of
COVID. Yeah, so it was all online. So to be honest, the first day I went in and I just fell into the class. There was no real introductions of, we have this new person in our class.
Okay.
So it was a bit kind of choppy for me, as I said before. And it was quite overwhelming. It was daunting. And as I said, kind of the split between the two elements of things. So as I had to bridge the gaps between what I didn't have. And I suppose getting to know people then as well, it was more difficult online.
How did that work? Because you couldn't hang out with anybody after classes.
It was difficult. And I know a lot of people in my course thought it was quite difficult as well, because you didn't have that kind of debrief, after college, where you're going for a coffee with people, and you can build those connections in that way. And it was hard. I think it was hard, and especially I know everyone, like, it's a universal experience in during COVID, that there was a loss of connection, between.
We also had I think our third and fourth year was also in COVID, so I can relate to it.
That's it. And it's really, really, really tough. And I think it's especially tough coming in as a new person in amongst it all. And then that kind of feeling of being an imposter, amongst all these people, because I suppose they knew, well, in my eyes, they knew each other. They were all, I had made these assumptions that they're all best friends and I'm coming in here now. And it wasn't the case. It wasn't the case at all. As I said, there probably were new people in the course, and that I wasn't aware of.
So in third year, you already, started your placement?
Yeah. So I started my placement, it would have been, let me think, fourth year. I think it was around fourth year that I started, just because I came in late, so I had a lot of kind of catching up to do, or so it felt. So I started my placement. So we had to do 25 hours of personal therapy before we could start placement. I'm sure you were the same.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of get through my personal therapy. So I did, I think it was once a week. I did it to kind of build it up, and then I pushed it out a little bit. So, and I remember someone in the course saying, you can't rush this course. You can't rush it. Like, I feel like in the social care, because I suppose quite theory based, you could kind of rush it, do things last minute, but you can't rush personal development. You can't. Yeah. So you have to take it slow and go at your own pace, with the personal therapy. So I did my 25 hours and I started applying for placements. So I got on my placement, started my placement, and like, as everyone says, you never forget your first client, and going in there, and it was something I was reflecting on even before coming to the podcast of my experience. I felt very nervous going in, and even the thoughts of starting, like, oh my God, who do you think you are? And going in and working with clients and all these things. So very nervous, but looking back on it, when I was sitting in the room, I felt really calm in the moment, really calm, really capable, really confident in myself, which I wasn't expecting to feel. It was just like, it just felt really natural for me in that moment. And that surprised me in the moment. Really.
It surprised you?
Really surprised me. And, but then the minute they left, oh God, it nearly kind of washed over me, that kind of, back to that kind of overwhelmed feeling of like, oh my God, what did I just do? Wow. So in the moment, yes, I felt calm, cool and collected. But then after, and I'm not sure if you had this kind of experience in your placement, but you'd be wrecked, tired. I found that you might do one session with a client and you'd be so tired. Like, I would nearly be wiped for the day, because you're putting in so much effort in the moment, but also outside of the sessions as well, in preparing emotionally and practically for the session. Like, so much goes into placement that I don't think people realise in the moment. So I had to do 120 hours. You probably had to do the same, did it? Yeah.
Where did you do your placement? Do you want to say?
So I did it in Carrick-on-Shore, in a resource centre in Carrick-on-Shore, which is where I rent a room now, just a couple of hours a week. As I said, I can mostly work online at the moment. And so I did my placement in Carrick-on-Shore. So I started off doing kind of one client a week, and then I'd build it up, but I was also working at the same time. Yeah. So I was working as a youth officer. And where I was working was about 20 minutes away, maybe about 15 minutes away. So it was ideal for me. So on my way down to work, I might do a client. On my way home, I might do a session with a client as well. And it was lovely. And I think in the job, when I was a youth officer, I always gravitated towards the one-to-one work. So I really enjoyed the one-to-one work, because I did a lot of group work when I worked with Froga.
What is Froga?
Froga, so it's like a youth organisation. So they would do kind of groups with young people. So in the groups, it might be something around mental health, creative things, like creating things, doing painting. It's kind of, I suppose it's young person led. You know, so it's their group and we facilitate it really. And it was a lovely job. I really enjoyed that job. And that job and the social care, and that's why I'm probably going to say it a million times during this podcast, is gave me such a foundation in my studies, in my in the way that I am as a psychotherapist.
Tell me more. In your foundations, in a way of,
I suppose, my worldview, you know, of where I've come from, and, you know, looking at the inequalities that we have, that, you know, maybe we don't realize. And I suppose in a way as well, the different personalities that you can meet, and, you know, being flexible, being open-minded, being resilient with different things that come up, you know.
So the exposure kind of maybe almost helped you to tailor your approach as a therapist.
Yes, then. Exactly. That's it. And getting to know so many different people, and coming across a lot of, hurdles, you know, and being resilient and flexible to be like, okay, this has come up. How do I manage? You know, how can we kind of balance this? You know, I suppose coming out of that black and white thinking and being kind of in that grey area as well as a counsellor.
And it looks like the background in social care has really kind of let you have a differently informed practice now, because you were exposed to diversity, difficulties, people with different presenting issues. That's how you would say, but you probably would say differently in your social care life. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as I said, the social care was fantastic in giving me that base in working. Yeah. So you then having clients, seeing clients in your fourth year, how do you imagine you would have worked if you didn't have that background? Because I assume that most therapists maybe wouldn't have that. Some of them maybe did come from social care. But it looks like you had an advantage of having the experience, having the points of view, having the education in a field that is quite maybe comparable.
I think, you know, the first thing that came into my mind as you said that was, I don't think I would have as much interest in inner child work.
Interesting.
So I think I probably would have been more, if I didn't have that foundation, I probably would have been more here and now, solution focused, and was a here now and then working towards future goals. But I think the social care really brought out that part in me, you know, to go back and to, you know, do that inner child work, more person-centered approach, definitely from that social care. Because I think if I hadn't done the social care, I wouldn't have had that. To be honest, I wouldn't have had as much of an open mind going into it. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is that social care really opened my perspective to a lot of things in life. And as I said, about me, you know, about who I am as a person. And even just going back to my personal therapy, when I did my personal therapy hours, like, that was life-changing, you know, and I'm sure you felt the same as well. And I think it's so important for counsellors to have that experience, have their own counselling experience, because it changes your whole perspective on life and gives you those coping skills to connect back to, you know, your responses here and now in the moment could be connected back to something that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And that really helped me in my placement as well. So if something came up and I felt quite anxious, I wasn't really too sure, I could bring that to my counsellor, you know, and talk about my emotional reaction to that, how that was impacting me, how I can, you know, sit with that feeling when I'm on placement. But placement is tough, isn't it? How did you find placement? Yeah.
Difficult at first. Yeah. Getting used to completely new line of work. How you are able to sit in silence with completely different variety of people who see stuff differently, experience stuff differently, feel things differently, react quite differently. Yeah.
And being able to adapt to that as well in the moment. So, you know, if there is someone who would prefer more of a structured session, being able to
be flexible, as you said before.
Exactly. Being flexible and be like, okay, let's see what that looks like for you. Whereas someone might prefer, you know, more of that person-centered approach, where we might take a little bit of a backseat, and being flexible in doing that. I think you bring it back to that social care. And when I worked as a youth officer, you really had to be flexible because things go wrong, things go wrong, and being able to be flexible. Okay, that's fine. You're heard in this space, and we can change that style of, wherever you want to go with the counselling. So that open mind, I'm sure you'd agree, is massive in counselling. And I suppose part of our toolkits, as counsellors, I think that's really important, to be open-minded in every aspect of counselling and your own life as well. Yeah. Personal life too.
I even feel like maybe I'm still in a placement. I'm going to be there for maybe many, many years, because like the stuff I used to do, 2 years ago, I'm kind of learning, trying to develop different things, adapting, changing, I'm kind of almost feeling like you're working on something all the time. And I'm kind of hoping that the clients in a year or two are going to, they're not going to know, because they're not going to, see the difference, but I might hope for that change, for that improvement in me, and for the growth.
Yeah, definitely.
Melissa, speaking of your placement, when you finished the placement and maybe you kept some of the clients, as it happens, did it feel different working with people when you were like, oh, I finished my placement? What was it like?
Yeah, so definitely 1000% felt totally different. Confidence, so much more confident working with people. And I suppose it's a mental thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'm coming in as a student. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, I'm qualified now. I'm qualified, yeah. So you feel more confidence. That's definitely did make a massive difference to me, just with, I suppose, that label. And of course, as students, we can't charge. Yeah. You're not allowed to charge when you're a student. So I think that sense of achievement, when you are earning from the profession, does add massively to, how you feel about yourself as a psychotherapist. So yeah, to answer your question, it really did make a massive difference in confidence and self-esteem, in, I suppose, motivation as well, to work hard at this career and to build up, a client base as well. So definitely made a massive difference. A couple of clients would have came with me after the placement. So what happened was, when I did my placement in Carrick, and then I started to rent a room in Carrick then after that. So I just went from kind of getting the room for free to renting. So there was no change in space for my clients, for me either. So that was really, really helpful to kind of still be in the same place. I'm still there now. So that was really helpful, I suppose, again, for my confidence, because it's not going to a different place, getting to know new people. It was the same place. So it was familiar to me.
You continued with. Yeah. And probably some of your clients didn't even notice that change, because for them it was still you, same place, same room.
Yeah. That's it. No, and that's it. And I suppose by the end of my placement, I, as you would have yourself, kind of started winding down with clients anyway. So I was only left with a couple of clients at the end, and they would have been very long-term clients. So there wouldn't have been much of a difference with them. So I suppose fee-wise, because I would have been going out on my own, kind of negotiate a fee that would work best for them. And I suppose operated on a sliding scale, and kind of that was a collaborative thing with my clients that I did for the ones that would have came with me through my placement, and that still stands to this day with those people.
That's lovely.
Yeah. I felt like I wanted to do that at the time, because I actually discussed it with my supervisor when I was in. When I was in placement, of, what do you think? I suppose kind of felt bad in a way to say that of, I am leaving, but I'm not, because I'm still here, but I'm qualified now. So I will be, I suppose, putting a fee on my service. And I suppose working through that with my supervisor as well, of, that we deserve to be paid for the work that we do. And brought it up, said it to clients that, I will have to charge, because I'm paying rent now as well. And I suppose explaining that, being completely honest that I'm paying rent, so I want to make sure that you're happy with the service that you're getting for what you're paying for, but also that I feel like I'm gaining from it too. You know, so that's how I worked. I was really nervous though when I was bringing it to clients.
And how are you looking at it now? Because you kind of almost are like, there's a smile on your face when you remember this memory.
Yeah, I think I was really proud of myself for doing it, because I think the people pleasery part of myself would have been like, no, free all day, you know, you know that I'm paying rent, so I'm losing money, you know, doing those. But I'm really proud of myself. And even just saying it out now, it's like, that was a big thing to do, to bring up the topic of money with clients, you know, who I had been probably working with for nearly a year for free. Yeah. You know, and to bring that up, and I suppose to open up that space to them to say, look, let's just talk about it. Let's see what comes out of it. And it was really positive. It was really, really, really positive experience. And I think that actually really, now that I'm talking about it now, it really helped me as a counsellor as well to have those tough conversations with clients and with people in general of how important it is to communicate how you're feeling, to be transparent with clients about how I feel like the process of counselling is going, where I'm at on a certain day, because I think that can be hard to do sometimes. We hold back and we're like, oh no, I could never ask them to pay for my services that I've put thousands into into doing, or into getting to that stage. And it was a really, really nice experience, actually, and all these little things build up who you are as a counsellor. They do, doesn't it?
We often forget them. I think I would often forget them.
You do, and I did.
It's so nice for me to kind of sit with somebody who would have a similar experience and who kind of, you know, holds that memory and holds that appreciation for themselves. Yeah, because I think we all kind of go through this, but we don't really maybe value us for all these difficulties we went through and how we handle them.
Yes, exactly. And I think the key thing with me there was supervision in that moment, because I remember so clearly bringing it to my supervisor at the time, and she really hyped me up, you know, and motivated me to say, Melissa, you deserve this. You deserve to charge this fee. And so I think that's a really good example of how supervision can be really, really, really helpful for counsellors and psychotherapists. I suppose when you're experiencing self-doubt, especially as a student. Now, it's not to say I don't experience it now, but I definitely held a lot more self-doubt as a student than I do now, and that's through putting effort into challenging and reframing that and bringing it to supervision. So I think looking back on it now, just as we're talking, it's reminding me of times where I did push myself to do it and how that reflects it on me as a psychotherapist now, you know. And it was part of that kind of stepping stones that we talked about of, you know, we do this and it went well, and if it didn't go well, then we can learn from that and we can apply it in a different way, do things different maybe in the future. And I think that's what counselling psychotherapy is all about, is, you know, learning from mistakes. You're never done learning as a psychotherapist, and you know that yourself. Like, there's always a CPD to do. Yes. There's always new research coming out, new things. And I think that mindset, that knowing your limitations, knowing what you don't know is so important. I think that's built into the training as well as a psychotherapist. It's kind of it's a way of kind of being and a way of living, I think, you know, a mentality as well. But yeah, thank you for reminding me of that experience as well.
Yeah. I don't think it ever stops with us. No. I'm sure I'll be here in 10 years, you know, being like, okay, another course I want to do, another books I want to read, another people I want to maybe interview. Yeah. I think we might have the natural curiosity for growth and kind of trying to become a better therapist for our clients. That's it. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Kind of a natural can't even pronounce the word, a natural curiosity with clients. And it's so rewarding because it's a different person that you're meeting
every single time. Like if was I linking it to placement, no one person is the same. Like, and I know you definitely feel this yourself, of every single client that walks through your door or that you see on a screen.
The online door.
The online door. Exactly. Is a different person with different needs, different personalities. So you're never going to know it all. Yeah. You're never going to know it all at all. And I think even going back to that integrative counselling psychotherapy degree that I did, that's something massive that I learned in that course as well, that you're not going to know it all. And it's okay to not know it all, because that's what it's about, is coming back and being like, okay, I think I could have done this a little bit better. Let's bring supervision. Let's have a chat about it. Let's see, how I can change it the next time, or am I just doubting myself and I did everything great, and I think that's a growth mindset, I think is what they kind of call it. Right. Yeah. Of, looking for those solutions of how can I be better, or, that sort of thing. So, yeah.
And just coming back on actually your two main courses, two main degrees, right? What was it like for you coming from the Masters of CBT to the person-centered course? Yeah.
I think because the Masters, the CBT was obviously focused on here and now. And I felt so much more natural in the person-centered, because as I said before, I was being drawn to that kind of person-centered.
Do you remember maybe a first maybe class or something in that person-centered course where you were like, this is it, I feel that I have arrived?
Do you know what? You just jogged a memory in me there. And one of the first classes I did, it was around kind of working with grief and loss. And it was actually quite the opposite, to be honest. So we were doing role plays. And I think because I came from CBT and it was more of like a person-centered role play, I was kind of like, come on. As in speed this up a little bit, that sort of thing. So that's something that I had to learn, was slow down, slow your mind down in that moment. So although I was kind of in my mind being pulled towards that person-centered, I was also kind of being pulled in. So in the CBT, I was being pulled towards the person-centered, but then when I was in the integrative course, I was being pulled towards the CBT. So, and sometimes I kind of experience that now of like, who am I as a counsellor, of that kind of, because I know you were asking me before, how do I integrate everything together? And I had to kind of sit back and think about that of, what am I being dragged towards? But I do think that if I hadn't done the CBT Masters and I went straight into the integrative, I would have been, I don't think I would have been looking for that kind of CBT part of me. I really don't. I think the CBT was probably a bit more familiar to me in the integrative counselling psychotherapy, so I would kind of gravitate towards that for assignments, because I had done a million assignments in CBT already, so I knew that I had that knowledge there in a kind of academic world, we'll say. But I think personally, I love going back to childhood and thinking, where did that come from? In childhood, and connecting back to my own childhood of, I reacted that way because this happened back then, and putting that together. So, yeah, to answer your question, there wasn't a specific kind of moment in it that I'm like, I like this person-centered. It was a bit of tug of war in my mind, and I think that's probably still there, as I'm talking about it now.
Sure. Yeah. Was it more like experiential, the integrative degree? Was it more like working with your other classmates, doing the fishbowls exercises? Yeah,
so it was very practical. So there was a lot of role plays. I love the role plays because you get so much more that, from doing the role plays than you do just kind of like sitting and, doing a PowerPoint. But I think the role plays really pushed up that insecurities in you, of, am I good enough? Did I say the right thing? Did I say the wrong thing? What is the right thing to say? What is the wrong thing to say?
Again, we're speaking about role plays on Zoom for you.
Yes.
Because still, during COVID, you guys went on Zoom.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm having still hard time remembering, because I know our first role plays were in the first and second year, which we were fully in a college, and I just can't imagine what my first role plays would be on Zoom.
Yeah, it was daunting. It was really, really, really daunting. But then I'm the opposite side, and I can't imagine doing it in person.
Right? Because, I see. Yeah.
Because even when we did the role plays in the CBT Masters, there was still a technical aspect of it, because I was being kind of shown down to my classmates, as I was doing it that time. So yes, I was doing it all online, so it was really daunting. There could be technical problems here and there that kind of interrupt that flow of the role plays. And I think that's probably, now that I'm talking about it, why I'm so comfortable doing online work.
Yeah.
Because that's what I know. That's where I was trained, was in the online space. So I got to, practice my role plays online, doing them. But I think that's the only way to learn as a counsellor, doing role plays. And
it wasn't your choice either. It wasn't like you had a choice. Like, that was what was happening for you.
Yeah.
I know your classmates. So
exactly. That's it. You don't have a choice in it. You have to do it. To become a counsellor, to pass that exam or pass that assignment that you have due. But and often even do role plays with personal people in my life. Like sitting down and practicing those skills, because you have to practice those core skills as a counsellor. And if you don't practice them, I remember talking to someone before, and they feel like you lose them, because it is a flow that you get into as a counsellor. So I really do think that, I think it was triads, that they call them triads, when we used to do kind of like a 3 people role play. So one person would be the observer.
Yes.
Did you do that as well?
Yeah.
One person would be the observer, and then
one is the client and one is the therapist.
One is the client and one is the therapist.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I found it most difficult being the client. Faking being the client in the moment, because I'm thinking, I hope I'm being a good client.
Oh yeah, being a good client. That's it.
Yeah. That I'm not making it too hard for my peer. That I'm not bringing too much of an issue to
or nothing at all.
Or not exactly.
Not giving anything.
Yeah, exactly. Not giving anything for them to
not feeding the child.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's it. So, being the counsellor, I suppose, and it goes back to, remember what I was saying about when as in like the cameras roll, then I feel calm, but it's after, or when I'm sitting in front of a client, I feel calm, but it's after, then I'm like, oh God, that's when the anxiety comes up for me. And it's kind of a pattern now that I'm talking about it, of when I was doing the role plays, that's what would happen. When I was a client, I was more nervous, but when I was in that counsellor role, I was a little bit more confident in myself. It's really interesting saying that out loud now, isn't it? It's a interesting kind of thing that maybe I should reflect on a little bit more, of why I do that, or why that came up.
How did you choose your topic for your bachelor thesis? Yes,
so the topic was about social media and body image. So the impact of social media and how that impacts our perception of our body image. Okay. So how I chose it was, I just have a personal interest in it through my own experiences with social media and comparing myself to other people. And I just find it really interesting because, like, I had an experience, I think it was through my own personal therapy actually, where I was talking about, how I would compare myself to other people online and how that impacts me. And it was through my exploration there that I realized I don't compare myself to people in person. I wasn't comparing myself to people in person. Okay. I wasn't sitting at a dinner table saying, oh, she's so much better than me, or, her hair is way nicer than mine, I wish I was like this. It was only when I was on social media that I compared myself to people. So then that kind of got me thinking. So I started doing, I suppose, behavioural experiments with myself, that I was like, right, I'm going to kind of monitor how I feel when I'm on social media. So there was one day actually I think I came off social media for a little while. Now this is my personal account, we'll say. Came off social media for a while and I found it really beneficial. Then I went back on it and I remember reflecting and thinking, my mood is a bit off today. And then I kind of thought back to what I had done in that day, and I had spent a lot of time on social media, and I was like, oh my God, Melissa, like this is really impacting you in probably more ways than one, in more ways that you probably don't even know right now. So that's kind of a long-winded way of answering your question there, that's what brought me to that thesis, because that's what was going on in my personal life at that time. So while I was going through personal therapy, that was going on, and then I kind of applied it to my thesis. So really, really, really enjoyed researching about that, like the body positivity movement. You know, other people's perceptions around that, you know, I suppose the positives to it, the maybe negatives to it, why it was created, and all that sort of thing, and research just around how, you know, social media impacts your perception of your body image. And I suppose,
did you find many kind of like a research papers? Did you find enough stuff?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
you?
There was a lot. There was way more in support than there was, you know, to not support, or you know, that sort of way. So I had so much data to write about in that thesis, and really enjoyed it. I actually really, really, really enjoyed it, because I don't think I'm the most academic person you'll ever meet, but I really enjoyed writing that thesis. And so I had to, so how it worked for us was that we had to do it through, we could only interview, not interview, I did a kind of like questionnaire. We could only do it with people in our class. So we weren't allowed to do it outside of the college.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Were you able to?
We had maybe a different model. I think we had to kind of interview therapists who already were qualified and, you know, accredited. So we had to do like at least 4 or 5 interviews with them.
Okay.
And then got the data, but maybe a different model how the college was doing the thesis.
I'm not sure why they did it like that, but so I had to do it through classmates, and a lot came up. I think it was that. So how I did it was I kind of did every social media app. So do you use Instagram? Do you use TikTok? Do you use YouTube? Do you use LinkedIn was one of them as well. And more or less how I did it, I can't explain it exactly now, was, you know, if someone said that, I think it came back that people who use Instagram more had a less positive image of their body. So it came back that more of those picture-based platforms, people compare themselves more on those sort of platforms. And I was like, oh my God, wow. This is a study that I'm after doing with psychotherapists in training, okay? People that you may have an assumption about that might, you know, have been through counselling, have, you know, may have a good
understanding of how things might work in the brain.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the data I'm getting back with them. Okay, what's going on outside of my little pocket of people? And so I'm just really, really passionate about that in social media and the impacts, and it reflects, I think, in who I am as a counsellor, you know, because I'll always kind of trickle in, and do you use social media? And for how long do you use social media?
And which ones?
Yeah, and which ones? And that's it. And I'm not for 1 second, and even through my studies, I was never for 1 second demonising social media, ever, and I never would. You know, like the poison is in the dose. And that's what I always say. If you use social media for, you know, a amount of time that works for you, you like to laugh at TikToks, great, that's perfect. But it's when it's becoming more of a negative space.
It maybe takes over, or like something kind of...
Yeah, exactly. When negative. It kind of takes over your life. So that's what kind of brought me to explore that, because I really want to do something that I was passionate about. And that I was interested in, because there's nothing worse than doing, you know, an assignment on something that you're just kind of like, oh, I just want to get it done.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to put my all in. And I remember actually personally that time in my life, there was a lot going on. So I was like, Melissa, you need to be interested. You need to want to do this. I think we were moving houses. There was so much going on. So I really needed to, I suppose, bring my passion out in something, and it did. And I'm really, really, really passionate about it. So yeah, that's the dissertation. As we were saying, that my other dissertations were more so kind of, I didn't actually carry out the research because of COVID. And then, well, I suppose with the social care degree, it was just kind of a research proposal. We didn't have to carry out the research. So for that one, I did research on the impacts of domestic violence on children. So it's read a lot of literature about that. And then for my master's, I did it on the impacts of of exercise on OCD.
Interesting.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So I think I linked it to COVID in a way. I can't exactly remember how I structured it, but it was definitely around the impacts of, you know, how exercise can help someone who does suffer with or has been diagnosed with OCD. Mm-hmm. So I've a lot of dissertations done. Yeah, but it was great. And as I said, I'm not the most academic person you'll ever meet, and that's why it was so important for me to be interested in what I was doing.
And engage. It looks like you're really engaged with whatever you are doing, you know, this degree or this thesis, this research.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it really influences how I work with clients, as I was saying, especially younger clients, you know, because I know that from my experience anyway, that they're more likely to use social media or be on these apps like TikTok, and just kind of, I suppose, exploring how would they use it? Is it healthy? Because I think it's so entwined in our lives, social media, in so many different ways, that sometimes we don't even realize the impacts that it's having on us, which is, in my personal experience, what happened. I didn't have a clue. I didn't realize until I went to counselling, and she must have asked me the question of, and, you know, does this reflect in your personal life? I'm like, no, I don't care. Didn't care, never do, and I don't too much in my personal life. It was always on social media, you know, about, oh, she's off doing this, they're off doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And it was a really big moment, I think that was for me, which obviously led me to do my dissertation on it. And yeah, so that's the story of my dissertation and the social media and what kind of and I did really well, actually. I got a 1-1 in it, so I was delighted. You? Yeah. My first ever 1-1.
Oh, fair play.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Take a sip of this.
And speaking of social medias, that's exactly how I felt when I saw your Instagram. I was like, I need to do more. This is wow, how is this possible? This is incredible.
That's it. But isn't it just, you know, and I think comparison, and that's a really good example actually, comparison can be really good if it's used in a positive way. So we'll say, if we just use that example that you brought up there of, you know, wow, she does all these different things on social media. If that motivated something in you to be like, okay, maybe I should go into social media a little bit more, and kind of motivated you in a positive way, that's great. So we do want to compare ourselves to people if it motivates us. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you had seen that and your inner critic started to come in and you weren't aware of that, and you started to say, oh, wow, how can I do that? I could never do that. You know, and not use that as motivation, but as kind of something
the beating stick against me.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want that, you know, for you to berate yourself with that and compare yourself, and I suppose put yourself below someone else is basically what I'm trying to say. So how we interpret things is so important there, and that's a really good example there. So hopefully I did motivate you to
You definitely
to do things.
did. You definitely did. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's actually a really good point.
Did you celebrate finishing the bachelor degree in integrative psychotherapy?
Did I celebrate when I finished? Yes, I did actually. So when you said the word celebrate there, my mind goes to party. It just went to kind of like a big party. I was celebrate with all these people. So I did celebrate. I was really proud of myself, to be honest. I was really, really proud of myself, because it had been a long time coming, because I knew that when I finished that integrative counselling and psychotherapy degree, that was it. Because it was nearly 8 years in college.
Yeah.
All after each other.
Social science, CBT and motivational interviewing, and integrative psychotherapy. Yeah. Yeah, you've been probably in college twice longer than I was.
And that's it. So I think for me, coming to the end of it, it wasn't just that I was finishing my degree. I was finishing, I suppose, a chapter in my life, to be honest, like a huge massive, because I was having a conversation with my boyfriend Steve, and it only dawned on me. I was like, I've been in education since I was 4.
Yeah.
when you think about it like
that's
that.
That's actually very interesting.
You know, since I was 4, obviously primary school, then going into secondary school, then going to, you know, all the degrees and education, that it wasn't just that I was finishing that degree. I was finishing a huge, massive chapter in my life. What do I do with that? But going back to your question, I did celebrate. Yeah, of course I did. Well-deserved celebration. And same for you. I think we probably went out for a meal or something, you know, Steve got me a couple of bits and, you know, just kind of mark the day. So I think I actually might have nearly over-celebrated. So I would have finished college. So it would have been my last ever day in college. So that was a celebration for me. Then my final results. That was a celebration for me. Then it was getting my notice of graduation. Right. There was another celebration. Then getting my pre-accreditation. Yeah. Oh no, it would have been pre-accreditation, wasn't it? Yeah. My pre-accreditation. That was a massive celebration. My graduation. Another celebration. The people were like, "Oh, come on, Melissa. I know, I know you've put a lot of work in this, but when does it end?
Can we have a break from celebrating?"
Yeah, exactly.
That is so beautiful, though.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm happy that I was able to acknowledge it. You know, and I'm laughing away, saying that people are probably like, "Oh, come on, will you?" But I know that everyone was really happy for me. You know, I know that they were, because, you know, I don't stop talking about it. So how could they not know? But yeah, and it's really, really, really interesting, I suppose, reflecting on it now with you, of all those celebrations of the lead up to that, you know, and even, as I know we'll get into in a while, the starting the private practice. So it kind of goes from, I suppose, in a way, all these celebrations, woohoo, the end of this, wah. But then it's also a sense of, okay, what now?
And how now?
And how now?
Yeah.
And exactly, that's a really good way to put it. What now? But how now? Where do I start?
Yeah.
Where do I start? Yeah. Who do I start with? You know, because you're kind of just left, or how I felt, I was left, you know, on my own, thinking, okay, where's the next course? You know, and I found myself kind of Googling, okay, what course did I go into next? But I just had to, I literally kind of had like an internal battle with myself of, Melissa, why are you doing this? Why are you seeking more in this kind of, I suppose, academic area? So it was a huge change for me.
It was comfortable, I guess. Yeah, I know, you tell me.
Yeah, that's it. It was comfortable for me to be like, oh, what am I going to do with all this free time? What am I going to do with my weekends? Because I didn't have weekends. Honestly, I didn't. It was college work at the weekends. I was working part-time. I was doing the placement.
Assignments,
exactly. Assignments, role plays outside of assignments. Like, it's like, okay, what do I do with all this free time? Where does that leave me?
Yeah.
You know, and it's really interesting because all my friends, we all kind of finished up. So a lot of my friends would have went on to their master's degrees as well. And we all kind of finished at the same time, maybe a couple of years in the difference. And to be honest, I think I see it with them as well, that it's like, okay, could someone please tell me where to go now?
What's next?
What's next as well?
Where's the sign? Looking for the sign. Where's the sign? Go this way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did you feel that?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I kind of knew I'm not going to do another course because it was just like all the thing, time, money, everything. I need at least a break from a course, and then I actually just stayed in private practice.
Yeah, that's it. And I found that when I was studying, there wasn't much information about starting your private practice.
Yeah,
there wasn't a module to say, okay, you know, this is how you set up a private practice. There was a little bit, maybe like a couple of slides in one module. So, because I always knew when I was getting into counselling psychotherapy that private practice was where I wanted to be. I wanted to run my own business, and I knew that. But there was no toolkit assigned to me to say, okay, this is how you start your private practice. Because I don't know about yourself now, but I'm not a business person.
I wasn't either.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Maybe I am a little bit now, but back then I wasn't a business person. I didn't know income tax, any of these things. Like we don't know these things of how to set up or register your business. And I think that would be something that I would love to see in a counselling and psychotherapy course.
Yeah, module. Yeah, for sure. Year 4.
Yes.
Please,
yeah,
people.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I completely agree, because that's one thing I do feel like I really lacked.
Yeah.
Was that kind of guidance on how do I start private practice? Can I start a private practice?
Yeah.
You know,
What does it even mean?
Yeah.
That word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. It's really, or even, you know, I suppose guidance on fees.
Yeah.
What fees do we set?
Speaking of private practice, I'm really curious how you set it up at the end and how you're working. And that's what we're going to cover in the next episode.
Woo.
Yay. Awesome.
Woo.
Awesome.
How exciting.
Awesome. Wow. I'll take a note.
Just in case I forget it,
You know
because
what? I'm going to record. Or you just say there.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And because then, why would I just...
we'll remember.
I'm going to write stuff down, just not to forget, like, because there is no recording medium. Yeah, just tell us.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
What were we talking about? Yeah. My mind's did.
Don't worry. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
This is great fun.
Yeah, it is. I'm really settling into it now. You're not going to be able to shut me up. So